You're back. It's that time with the miracle of healing. Jenny's story of overcoming suicidal thoughts and cancer. I'm so happy to have you guys on here today. Welcome, your backup plan tribe to this week's show. I'm so excited to have both Jenny and you here. If you are new here, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel over here. Let's switch the hand. Down below there somewhere. Just for you. I'm Tina. If you are new here to our show from your backup plan app, I am the developer and creator of your backup plan, and I am a best-selling author of In the Blink of an Eye. Just like that, your life changes in a second. From what you did when you walked into the hospital to when you walk out, or if you do walk out of the hospital, that's how fast your life changes. I'm also a financial advisor and an emergency preparedness coach to help everybody become more prepared for life in general, whether it's losing your purse, wallet, passport, documentation, having it stolen, or even all the sicknesses in the pandemic. You know, I have amazing guests on our show each and every week, like Jenny, and they're real life stories with real people, and that talk about accidents and sicknesses and trauma in their lives. And when something happens, it's something life changes. Your life changes in a second, sometimes for the good and sometimes not so good. But, you know, we're not all given 5-minute evacuation notices in our life for such thing as a wildfire or hurricane or tornado or even an earthquake. But when we do, those are blessed 5 minutes, I'll tell you. And you better have your act together and have a grab and go bag and be prepared. But that being said, I'm so happy to have Jenny on our show today. We're going to have a quick commercial, and I'll see you back here in a quick second.
Notches, I strolled without a care, cause I'm going down the road to a brand new place, and I'll get there with a smile on my face, yeah, so lift me up, I'm moving along, singing and dancing while I play my song.
There we are, I did it this time. Welcome back, everybody. Let's bring on Jenny Kennedy. She comes to us from New Zealand. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you, Tina. It's such a pleasure to be here and speak with you and your guests today.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled to have you here, Jenny. And Jenny comes to us from New Zealand, Auckland, right? Is it Auckland?
No, it's about 3 hours south of Auckland at a place called Mount Maunganui.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Is it lovely?
It's a beautiful beach resort. It's lovely.
Oh, nice. So Jenny is an intuitive healer and teacher, and she's gone through she has quite the story of Jenny's story of overcoming suicidal thoughts and cancer. And so thank you, Jenny, for coming on the show. I just wanted to say my thanks to our listeners as well. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you already haven't, press down here in the subscribe button so that you get notified of the upcoming videos, because we'd love to have you here. So Jenny, where did all of this start for you? This whirlwind, it sounded like to me, of your life journey. It's crazy.
Well, looking back on it, it was crazy, and It started gradually, actually. I was working in a legal office, and it was a very, very busy legal office. And I was the typical A-type personality, believed I could do everything, took on a whole big workload. And I also worried a lot about my work, that I was, getting it perfect, doing it right. So how it started was that, I was given multi-million deals, and I'd be lying awake at night thinking, had I done that? Had I done that? Had I made sure? Because if my deal fell over, then, in real estate, it's a whole, backup behind us that everything falls down.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise that this was causing me a lot of stress. So I started to not feel right and feel unwell. And then I got really tired and jittery, and I'd snap at people, not at work, of course, because I was that good girl, had the great veneer, I call it, pretending I had everything handled.
Your costume
And
was
then
on.
it was on. It was on. It wasn't till I could come home and take off the costume that it was really just the stress that, came out. And it was one night I woke up and I had no idea what was happening, but it was my first panic attack. And honestly, I thought I was dying. There was just, unless anyone's experienced it, you can't explain what it was like. And from someone looking on, they sort of think you're nuts. What are you so fearful about? And I couldn't get any relief except I'd get up out of my bed and just walk round and round and round the backyard. I suppose, it's being on the ground or something like that was helping me feel calm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next day, of course, I was exhausted, but got up, kept pushing myself at work and all the rest of it. Just kept going till one day I could not get out of bed. And of course, I was lying in bed worrying about what was happening, and I must be dying.
Makes it worse.
It makes
accumulates,
it worse.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
And I went to the doctor, and they'd say, no, there's nothing wrong with you. And I said, there's got to be something wrong with me. And it wasn't.
Were you finding them more often, Jenny? Were you finding the attacks more often in the day?
Yes. They'd come on more often. And, I still didn't know what was actually happening. Nobody had explained it to me. And it got so bad that by this time I couldn't eat. When you'll see those people run a marathon, and at the end of it, they can hardly walk. They're stumbling all over the place. And that's because the body's just pumped with so much adrenaline. Well, that's what I was like. To get to the bathroom was just a huge effort. Someone would have to support me to get there. And it was one night I really just, I don't know who I was talking to, but it was in my head. I was lying there, another night that I couldn't sleep all night. I just said, well, I'm over this. If you don't send me an answer, I'm out of here. So, the pain of living was far, far greater than me taking my life. And of course, now in this place, I'd never, ever contemplate taking my life, but I totally understand people that do, because that pain of living is just gets to that place of being unbearable. But the magic in that,
and it's not so much that you don't think of your loved ones, right? It's not like it's not about that. It's just about your inner being, that you're just suffering so much.
Well, if I could liken it, say, you get clamped into a huge vice, like a whole body vice, and it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and you're in so much pain. At that point, you're not actually even really thinking about your loved ones. Yeah, your mind realizes, but you just want to escape that pain.
Yeah.
And that's what it feels like. But I didn't realize that when I had that thought in my head, that someone, the universe, God, whatever you like to call it, because, you know, I'm not a religious person, but someone was listening. And it was a couple of days later that I was handed a book. And the book was all about accessing suppressed emotions. So it's a book called The Journey by Brandon Bayes. And it's about understanding that every time we have a suppressed emotion in our life, we physically store that in our cells. And so over time, there's a propensity for dis-ease or, you know, emotional reactions
Issues.
to take place. Yeah. And so this is what I realized, not at, you know, at that time, but I came to realize. But I read that book, and Brandon has written there's 2 processes in the back of the book through guided meditation. And I took myself for that process. So it was just by reading the book that I just felt this huge relief. And it gave me hope.
What do you think triggered that? Was there something that you realized in the book all of a sudden?
It was because it's a process that you actually do. So it's not about something you read, but something you are experiencing. So I was able to access that suppressed emotion. And as I accessed it, then I was able to release it. And that's where that feeling of relief came and that hope. So it took quite a while for my physical body to catch up. So I continued just reading these processes, going through them and doing that inner work, the small, you know, myself. So what happens through the process, you can actually access the memory. So when we have a suppressed emotion, and normally that's in childhood, or if we are in a situation where we feel really disempowered, the damage is done not from what happens, but how we react. So if we don't have a safe space to express how we feel, then we are programmed with a particular belief. And so we live our lives from our sum totals of our beliefs. So it's an ongoing process of accessing those beliefs in order for healing to take place and really to live our life from our full potential. So I love my father dearly, but he was very abusive. So one minute I was his princess, and the next minute I was being yelled and screamed at and thrashed, and that would break my heart in that moment. So I would try so hard to be good, and then you know, my older brother might have been niggling me or something, and then I'd react because you get sick of it, and then I blame myself because we'd all get a hiding, and then I blame myself. Oh my God, I should have just let my brother, you know, do that or whatever. And so I was trying to be good all the time, and so that was, you could see in my professional life, I was trying so hard to do my best. And if I got it wrong, oh my gosh, what would the consequences be?
Yeah. And so all of that came up from before.
Yes.
The exact same stuff that you push down and down and down.
Yeah. And because I say we're like little computers, and we get programmed by all these events that happen to us in our life. And so as we unpack this and do the healing, we are reprogramming the computer. So I could still be doing the same job, but not from that old feeling of, you know, something's going to go drastically wrong if I make a mistake.
Yeah.
And so I'm approaching it, still doing the same job, but approaching it from a much calmer place. And, you know, when I was just going to say, when I did finally couldn't go into work anymore because I was, you know, bedridden, they had to have 2 people to replace me.
And you went back after?
No, never went back. No, never went back. Because that understanding changed the whole trajectory of my life. Actually, after that, I went and, I got myself much better, and I went and studied with Brandon Bayes, and that was the beginning of, understanding that the mind and the body, and, the mind, body, and spirit cannot be separated. This is where healing needs to happen at that deep level. I could have gone and taken a pill, to calm my nerves, but it wasn't changing anything. I would have just been existing in life.
Yeah, and it just keeps on spiraling and spiraling. So I imagine that if you had had an abusive husband, that it would have brought up that same kind of fear as well, right?
Absolutely. Yes. And, in actual fact, now looking back at it, our relationship was abusive, more in the, the emotional and the verbal. And no excuses, but he had an alcoholic father, so his child, and the oldest of 13 children, so his childhood was horrendous. But the two of us, you can see we were the perfect match.
Yeah.
So I was just recreating my father in that relationship.
Yes.
But I am lucky because if I've done the work, he's organically changed. So not all partners will do that, but and that's where I have no attachment to whether a relationship works or not. If the other partner's willing to change, then you can keep growing together. And to be honest, it's still a work in progress, our relationship.
Always.
Yeah.
Every relationship is.
Yes. Yeah. But whether it's fortunate, I don't know, because the realization I've had, if he hadn't, as I've done the work and changed and no longer putting up with what I used to put up with and thinking on an unconscious level, that's the only love I deserve. Because that's
right.
where, I got from my father.
That's what we got used to.
Yeah. But when you become conscious of those patterns, everything changes.
It does.
And so as I say, it only needs one person in a family to do the work. Everybody else will get it. They will get that opportunity to heal. So my husband unconsciously has got the opportunity to heal because, each time I'm putting up my boundaries and he's stepping up, and then I become aware of somewhere else in our relationship where, I'm just, reliving that pattern, and then I'll put up my boundaries, up he will step.
Do you
find...
it's
been, work in progress.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure forever it will be. And that's what I was going to ask. Because do you find more that if you get that feeling that you can recognize it quicker now and put a stop to it? You know what I mean? Like you can change that? Because I don't think anything ever changes unless you recognize it.
Absolutely, Tina, absolutely. And the thing was, because I hated conflict and I would do anything to create the peace, this is part of why my intuition developed, because to survive, I had to really read a room, read other people's moods, where they're at, so I could keep myself safe and keep out of my father's way. And so I became the chronic people pleaser. I didn't even know what I wanted. I was just watching what everybody else wanted and would go along with that. And it wasn't till 10 years later, when I got the cancer diagnosis, that my husband actually said to me, ever since you've got cancer, you've got angry. And I go, good.
Oh.
Because I'd never been able to access the anger before.
Because you kept it quiet.
I kept it quiet and would just push it down and go, oh, what do I need to do to keep someone else happy? Not, I'm angry. What am I going to do about me being angry?
Exactly. And I think that's true when you're around abusive father or mother or an abusive husband or partner. I think that it becomes all about them. And then you're just like this tag along, And God forbid that you get angry, because abusive people do not like anyone else angry but them.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
that's right. Yeah,
So you always, you
that's
just
right.
push it back, and you don't put that anger out because they don't want you to do it. So
No.
to, like you said, to go with the flow, you be quiet.
Absolutely. And no coincidence that I got ovarian cancer. You know, I was diagnosed with stage 3C ovarian cancer because it had metastasized into my lymph nodes, because ovaries where we create our life, a life. And I didn't know how to create a life for me. I had no idea what I even wanted.
Yeah.
And so from the you know, the burnout in the corporate world, it sort of started my journey of recognizing the mind, body, spirit. You know, you cannot separate it. And I went on a lot of courses and did a lot of training and had the understanding, but I still wasn't really putting it into practice. So it wasn't till I got the cancer diagnosis that I did actually get angry, recognize the anger, and then start doing something about it. Because that's the hardest part, is
Yes. Well,
doing
it's
something
change,
about it.
because your body,
Yeah.
you're not used to doing that action, right?
Yeah. And it's scary. It really is
How many years
scary.
difference between when you started working on yourself to the cancer diagnosis? How long would that have been?
10 years.
10 years. It's a lot
10
of working
years.
on yourself.
It was a lot of working on myself. And that's what I realized, although we do have to be careful what we ask for. So that changed the trajectory. I stepped away from the legal work and got into massage and started developing my intuition, because I realized when I was massaging someone, I could read what was going on with them. So I started doing lots of training and, you know, reading that. So I actually put out a prayer or in meditation, and I asked to be the best possible healer I could be. And then they went, okay, here's incurable cancer. But to be fair, I had an awful lot of stress. I've got 2 boys, and one of my boys was really having a battle with drugs, about as bad as you could get with drugs, really.
Oh,
And it was a lot of worry for me. And you know, I think all of that combined, and not that I'm blaming him, because anybody that takes drugs, it's just a way to alleviate their anxiety, because he'd had a lot of anxiety. And to, you know, just touch on his story a little bit. When he was 3 months old, my brother had a little boy who was 3 months old who died of a cot death. So my anxiety was projected onto my son, thinking he was going to die all the time. So he grew up to be an extremely anxious child. And of course, what do we do when we're anxious? We take the drugs to, you know, find some peace.
something to
But
make you feel better.
in the moment. So, you know, there's no judgment about anyone taking drugs until they can find a coping mechanism that's the best thing for them to do in that moment, because it's the thing that gives them the most relief. But the beautiful thing was that as I did my work and letting go of the unconscious belief that he was going to die, that he started to heal as well. It was beautiful.
Oh, isn't that nice?
Because we're all interconnected.
Yeah. And how is he now, Jenny?
Amazing. Fantastic.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Yep. He's a very successful businessman, and doing really, really well. He hasn't taken drugs for a long time now. Maybe 15 years now he's been clean.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, which is fantastic.
And
Yeah,
you
so
see celebrities sometimes slip into the same kind of thing where they become successful really quick, and whether they're musicians, and then they fall into some sort of addiction or drugs or alcohol or pills or something to escape. And I always wish I
they
could
do.
just hug them and hug them so hard that they'll just feel better enough to not want it again. That's how I want to do, but I know that's not much
Yeah,
help.
but no, because we've got to do the inner work ourselves, and often with celebrities, they get that huge hit of oxytocin and dopamine, the actual chemicals when they go out on stage and got adoring fans and all the rest of it. But when they step back from it, they get the huge crash, and that's when they'll then go and reach, for the drugs to help bring them up again. But underlying
Yeah.
all of it is that they're not feeling loved.
Yes.
They need something external to make them feel loved. But that's all of us, really. All of us are just looking for love. I was just
Yes.
looking for my father's love, so I just try my very best at everything, thinking I will get
Yeah.
approval.
Yes. And I think that hurts your love inside, because you have to learn to love yourself
Yes.
first
Yeah.
before you can
You
learn
do.
to love someone else.
Yeah. Yes.
But we're not
And
taught
that's
that
it.
growing up.
No. And so when we're born, we just come in with that knowing that everything will be met, we'll be warm, we'll be fed, we'll receive our mother's love. But of course,
Yeah.
often that doesn't happen. So subconsciously, we're not even aware of it. We're forming beliefs about ourselves that we don't deserve love.
Yeah, exactly. Now, before we go
And so,
into your story of a cancer journey, I'm just going to
mm-hmm,
quickly tell everybody, if you're new here, welcome. Make sure you click down below and follow us and subscribe to our channel. And if you think that there might be someone in your life that this might help, or someone might appreciate you sharing this with them, because, Jenny and I are here. Our purpose is to help one person for every show. And I think we really do that. So please like, share, and subscribe so that you can pass on something that might help someone else. And so, Jenny, I was curious. I think it must be one of the scariest things when you go to the doctor and you hear those words. What was that like for you when you finally got better and you found some solace to your anxiety issues, and you were working through all that, and then all of a sudden, bang,
mm-hmm.
the doctor
Well,
says,
I looked healthy and I felt healthy, but I just noticed a little lump in my lower abdomen. And so I went to the doctor, and, I was lying down on the table and she's palpating it. And straight away I could tell by her reaction. She just said to me, "Oh, I just got to excuse me while I go out and put some wheels in motion." And I'm going, "What?
oh gosh,
What was the big panic about this?" And she
oh
came
dear,
back, and I said, "Could this be serious?" And she just looked at me and said, "Yes." And so we ran, I went and did some tests and all the rest of it, just thinking, "Oh, she's wrong. It'll just be a fibroid," because I thought I'd done all this work. And then I was working in my healing room, and I came out and checked the answer phone, and she'd left a message: would I come down at the end of the day, once her surgery had finished, and could I bring a support person with me? And I thought, oh, it still wasn't registering that something was really
no,
wrong. So I walked into her surgery with a little bit of concern, but not too bad. And then she said to me, "I'm so sorry, but you have incurable ovarian cancer." And my body just shut down completely, entirely. I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't think. I don't know where I went. And it wasn't till I don't know how much longer she said to my husband, "I'll get you a wheelchair and
oh,
wheel you you can wheel Jenny out to the car, that I kind of thought, oh, I'm going to use all my strength to pull myself up. But I didn't realize it then, but I thought, wow. So immediately that's had an effect like that on my physical body.
Yeah.
So surely, and the only thought I had was I was going to die, and immediately my body closed down like that. So I thought, well, it must be all of these beliefs that I'm carrying that has created this cancer in my body. So I was terrified. It was shock first, and then that wore off and the terror kicked in. And as I said, I've been an intuitive healer for 10 years prior to this. So my intuition is really developed. And everybody, it's just a part of your brain. Everybody has that inner knowing, that intuition. The more you use it, the more it develops. It's just like a muscle. So it was 10 days following the diagnosis that it was just between sleeping and waking that a voice in my head just said, you are healed. And I just sort of, but my body went into that relief. It was palpable that, I'm healed. And I sort of thought, that's really weird. What's happened? But when I was doing my research afterwards, what I realized is when we're facing a life and death situation, the intuition can override the logical thinking brain. And because my intuition, is really highly developed, it was in that state between waking and sleeping where that can take place. And also when you're between waking and sleeping, you're in a theta state of consciousness. So we have alpha, beta, delta, theta, gamma. And theta is when the brain waves are really slowed down, and it's so much easier to reprogram the subconscious. So that's what actually happened to me in that moment. But of course, I'd go back into the medical people and they'd tell me, now we can't cure you. And so I'd step back into that fear. So I had to keep bringing myself back to believing that I was healed. And it was kind of like starting way back then, when in the middle of the night, when I was, in the burnout or breakdown in the legal profession, when I just in my head screamed out, show me an answer, I'm going to commit suicide, that I started to realize when you ask, you've just got to look and something will come, into your path. And I was reading the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton, and he's a cellular biologist. And he was looking at his petri dish in his laboratory one day. And what he uncovered was that it is the perception of the environment that actually changes the cell. So in human terms, the perception is a belief. So when you believe something, the cells actually start to change. So the minute that I had that thought, that download of I am healed, was the minute my cells started to change to match that belief. And it's just coincidentally or not, I call it synchronistically, that his research, his scientific research, dropped into my knowing. And that was a huge confirmation to what I'd intuitively known. So don't get me wrong. Really yeah. But don't get me wrong, because I still had major surgery. And, one of the tumours was the size of a melon. So it was pretty big. Had that cut out. And
don't you wonder where that goes in your body, even if it's the size of a baseball or something? Like, where is it hiding?
Yeah. No, it wasn't hiding, because I'd lie down and my tummy would have a big lump in it. Yeah. And it grew in 4 weeks. By the time I was diagnosed to the time I had my operation, it grew from just a little lump to this huge lump. So, the cancer I had was growing really, really quickly. And yeah, so getting the science behind what I was intuitively knowing was just so awesome. And in my journey, I didn't realize it then, but as sort of documented as I went, what I discovered was that I uncovered 6 steps to healing, and I use that, with my clients, no matter what they're going through, whether it's emotionally, physically, wanting to grow their businesses, whatever it is. And the first step is hope, and turn that hope into belief. So I had that hope that I could heal, and then, by getting that knowing, I was beginning to turn it into belief. And then the word got out in the little town that I was living at that time. And one of my friends came to visit me, and she said, "Oh, I know someone who's just been diagnosed with what you've been diagnosed. She's had her first chemotherapy, but she's died." And so you can imagine my reaction. My body went just straight away into fear. But she did me a big favor, because from then on, I decided to only surround myself with people who were on my side, who believed I could heal. And that's my second step to healing, is to surround yourself with people who will encourage you and support you. Because some of my spiritual friends would say, "You'll sort this out, you've got this, I'm sure you'll find the answers," which helped, me believing that I could do this. And so that's my second step to healing. And then I thought, okay, so now what do I do? So I just went into meditation, and I got guided to go into the tumor. And that's when it said to me, it kind of spoke to me, and it said, "Well, you look good, Jenny, you feel great, but something's not right inside. We're coming from the inside out to show you this is where the healing needs to happen, from the inside." Thought, yep, okay. So still didn't know. Well, I did have a lot of skills, from what I'd learned in the last 10 years. But I called up a friend, and I asked her if she would sit with me, and we'd go into meditation, just by setting that intent to be led to the root cause. And I was actually taken back to a memory that it was quite an emotional memory, but I'd uncovered 2 beliefs: that it must have been my fault, and I must have done something wrong. And I realized that I'd lived my whole life from that place where, I've previously shared with you about, my father. But from a medical point of view, I was always living in fight and flight. I was always on edge. And after the cancer, I actually had myself hooked up. Part of my healing was I was hooked up to a computer program that would measure how often my body would go into parasympathetic, nervous system would be activated. And I thought I was totally relaxed. Not once.
And you weren't.
Not once was my body kicked into parasympathetic nervous. So we have, for those of you listeners who are not aware, we have sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. So when we're stressed, we go into sympathetic, and then the stress goes, and we relax back into parasympathetic nervous system. And that's when the body does its resting, restoring, and repair from, having been in stress. So many of us are stressed and hardly activate the parasympathetic, but for me, never did. So really, I was a disaster waiting to happen. So I had to relearn how to activate my parasympathetic nervous system, and that's through the breath, because I was always breathing up like this.
Yeah.
So
I even find myself, I'm sure listeners do too, that you find that you're not taking those deep breaths.
Yeah. And when we're taking shallow breaths, We're up in our head and we're not actually listening to what our body's trying to tell us. Because you can run on adrenaline for a long time. So if you've got a very stressful job, you just keep pushing. And it's when you activate the parasympathetic by taking some big, deep breaths. You might go and have a massage and that will help activate it. And you come out of there and you think, oh, I feel whacked. And that's because the parasympathetics kicked in and the body's really telling you where it's at. But
it's
the way
hard
we
to
live
not
our
know
lives,
that. If you don't know it, you can't change it.
No.
So,
And that's the beauty of meditation or getting into nature, because that allows us to relax, get grounded, bring ourselves back into the body. And it's when we're back in our body where our intuition can speak to us.
yeah.
It can tell us, this is out of alignment. And say, for example, one of your listeners has got a really stressful job. And we think, how are we going to pay the bills? I really hate my job. So they're always coming from that place of fight and flight. But if you can step into that place of like that little baby when it's first born, of believing that everything will be provided for you and the answers will come without having to know how the answers are going to come and when they're going to come, immediately the parasympathetic nervous system is activated and we can begin listening to our intuitive guidance about what to do and how to do it. And that's really the basis behind all healing, is to trust that we are co-creators with the universe. And it's when I was led to that root cause, which is that fourth step to my healing, where it took me into a deeper knowing of all the healing that I had done previously, that I am a co-creator with the universe. And I didn't know how I was going to heal, but the universe would bring it to me and show me. And so the right people would drop into my path. It might be just something I watch on TV that's gold. I've got that. And it would take me one step towards that journey. And
or
so
the book that you were talking about that dropped in your lap.
That just dropped in. Absolutely. And so that's the HEAL-U, the acronym I use for these 6 steps. That dash is to surrender. So it's to surrender into that place of not knowing, surrender into, yes, I'm stressed right now because, I've got a job that I don't really like and it's taking way too much from me. When we really accept it, that's kind of that step. And that's with, people in my group programs that I do with cancer. I actually to get them to share their story of what they're dealing with at the moment, which can be quite challenging because some people think, I've got to think positively. No, accept where you're at, and then we can build up from that with the intent that I am healed, or I'm already creating my perfect job, the perfect balance in my life, knowing that that's going to continue to drop into your consciousness, into your world, just bit by bit. And it's also to surrender into the emotions. As people think we've got to be positive, but I was positive. I've been positive for how many ever years by, as you say, putting on that costume and not really acknowledging that anger that was here. So when we surrender to the emotions, but then what are we going to do about those emotions? That's where the magic happens. That's where we take back our power and the healing begins to happen. And then the U in my HEAL-U is to actually unleash your plan. And that can be individual to every single person. And that's what I, with the clients that I work with, don't take my plan. If something goes through your intuitive filter and feels right for you to take, that was part of my plan, but you be open to what feels right for you in your plan. See, I never changed my diet at all, whereas some people, it feels right for them in that moment to change their diet.
Yeah,
But
I've
then
heard
we've got
that.
to establish, are you changing your diet from a place of fear, or are you changing your diet from an intuitive knowing that your body is going to operate in an optimal place from eating that food? And when I work with clients and they realize, oh my gosh, I've been following this diet, I haven't been enjoying my food, but from a place of fear, then they can
Yeah.
relax, trust that they will know what to eat, and immediately their parasympathetic nervous system's activated and healing's happening in their body without them knowing a thing.
What do you think is the number one when you're talking to cancer patients? Do they all have something that they could fear? Have they all had some trauma, something that each one has had to uncover?
Always, absolutely always. Many of them will come to me and say, oh, I haven't had any trauma. And then when we unpack it, because they've done such a good job of suppressing it, that wasn't traumatic. But when we've really dived deep, they've realised how traumatic it was and the effect, as I say, the reprogramming of the computer, how the computer is, run on automatic, that what they were doing had been
Well,
so
and it affects your
detrimental.
relationships, it affects your work, like you, it affects your career, or if you're self-employed, it affects your business.
It affects, you cannot separate your health, wealth, and relationships. It
Yeah.
affects the way you attract abundance into your life in all areas. And that's the beauty of, clients that I've worked with. When once we've got through the journey they've got, but it's not only healed me physically, my relationship's amazing now, and my life is just a dream.
Wow. And it's just like you flicked your switch.
Yep. Flick the
Even
switch.
though I wish there was one that you could switch. I'm sure everybody that you've worked with would say that too.
Yes, yeah. I mean, we all want, and sometimes I've worked with people and then their cancers come back and I've done everything. Where we've gone into it, they've realized, oh, now I see what I was avoiding. And then they've gone on
Oh,
to heal it when it's come back. And let me share when mine started. So I was living in the South Island of New Zealand. We have two main islands. And after I'd got through the cancer journey and I had no evidence of disease, and I thought, well, life is finite. I want to be living where I really want to live and doing what I really want to do. So we upped stakes and moved to a much warmer part of the island, to this beautiful place where I live now, Mount Maunganui, right by the beach. And I had to change my medical team. And I'd chosen not to have any more blood tests because they said all they could do was give me more chemotherapy. And I'd had a third of the chemotherapy that they said would just give me a few more months to live, till my intuitive knowing had told me I don't need any more. And so I wasn't going to have any more chemo. So what was the point of having any more blood tests? And so
yeah.
I got a new gynecologist and he said to me, oh, we need to do some more blood tests. And I said to him, but I thought it would have been on my notes. I don't want any more blood tests. Oh, no, he said, we need to have some more. And I said, no, I don't want any more. And he said, no, I need to know where you're at. And he picked up the laboratory form, filled it in, popped it down on the desk and said, go and get some blood tests. I went out of there fuming. And I sat with it for a couple of days and I thought, oh, darn it, I'm going to prove him wrong. Off I went to get the blood tests. And it was about a few days later, my MD rang me and said, has anybody given you your blood results? And I said, no. And she went, oh, Your cancer markers have shot right back up. And then she said, you need to go and see your oncologist. And I sat with it and I thought, I know why they've shot up, because no didn't mean no. That was re-triggering my abuse when I'd been sexually abused and said no, and it had been ignored. Now, I could have just, internally laughed at that gynecologist. Oh, I'm not doing that, ripped it up. And nothing, it wouldn't have affected my body. But because I allowed my body to be, or, from my programming to be triggered, then that was triggering something unhealed in me still. So I said to my oncologist, give me 3 months and I'll be back. So I went and did more inner work and went back 3 months, and to their utter surprise, my cancer markers had dropped right back down. But knowing that everything is perfect and the universe is always supporting you, it is now given me medical evidence of suppressing emotions and then releasing them, how that shows up on my cancer markers. So in actual fact, it was a gift. That gynecologist. So when we look at our lives that way, that everybody in our life, when they trigger us, it's just a gift for us to go and look within to what needs to be healed. It changes everything, and we start to take back our power, rather projecting and going, oh, that gynecologist, why didn't he listen to me? And going into that story, owning it and healing from it. And so now if I say no and they don't acknowledge it, then I will, get myself out of that situation or just ignore it and make myself safe.
Right. So you kind of block it, I guess. It's kind of your own boundary or block or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. And it could be, say, for example, my husband wants to go, just say, for a walk on the beach, and I'm feeling really, really tired. And he'll say, oh, come on, let's go for a walk on the beach. I say, no, I don't want to. And I realize, actually, I'm starting to go into that place of pleasing him. I'll just say, no, I'd love to, but for now, this is what I need, just a rest. So it can be as simple as that.
No, that sounds awesome. What was it like with your husband? How did he handle things with you? With those, with that news?
My husband's an engineer, so he's so in his head trying to solve problems. So he would spend hours and hours and hours on the computer. But looking at his childhood stuff, that was making him safe, because he needed to know what might happen to make him safe. But bless him, he never ever shared, all the prognoses and things with me. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And he finds that being in his head and being an engineer and needing proof of things, he finds it kind of hard to get his head around what I've done. But he has totally supported me all that way. And I would go into the fear. I remember once we were in the car and I was getting uptight about having to go and have more chemo. And we didn't have any grandchildren at that point in time. And he said to me, oh, but just imagine what it's going to feel when you first hold that grandchild in your arm. And immediately that took me into that place of creating that feeling and stepping out of that fear. So he wasn't conscious of doing it, but that's what he was doing. So I'm really grateful, whether it's luck or whatever it was, that unconsciously he was playing that part. And unconsciously he believed I could do it.
Yeah, because that's great support.
Fabulous support. So and what actually happened when I first got diagnosed, because of both of our trauma, he'd never really been able to be emotionally there for him. And I said to him, I can't do this journey with you, because I really need someone to be there for me emotionally. And I was ready to leave the marriage because I knew it needed to be all about me. And, he broke down and he cried and he said, I just don't know how to do this, but I'll really, really try. So then he went into the deep end and he'd go, what do you need now? And what do you need? And that became exhausting. And so one morning I was lying in bed and I was just thinking, I just wish my husband could just get it without knowing, asking me all the time what I needed. And I just no sooner sort of said that in my head, and he walked into the room and he said, I'm sure you'd like the curtains open so the sun can come streaming in. And I'm going, yes, he's starting to intuit what I need. So it's a balance in our relationships. And I work with a lot of people going through relationships who are ready to leave their partners. And I say, okay, let's just work on this first. Just make a commitment that as you do your thing, we will give your partner an opportunity to step up. Sometimes the partner is ready, and sometimes the person I'm working with knows it's time to walk away, but the walking away becomes much easier.
Well, I've had a lot of clients, and a lot of times the spouse runs the other direction when you have that type of diagnosis.
Yes.
It's pretty high, actually.
It is. And some realize that they just can't do it. And of course, it's triggering their own beliefs about death too.
Yeah.
I mean, it triggers a lot of people's, you can see by their reaction. And that's why I thought, I'm not going to put myself around those people that I will trigger their views or their beliefs on death.
Yeah. What were you saying backstage about a friend of yours who passed away in Greece?
Yes. That and this is in relationships where it's really, really important to sort of have the balance so that you don't give your power away completely. So I had a friend, and her and her husband had saved for a long time. And before she went, she said to me, I know there's something I'm going to uncover in Greece. There's a reason I've got to go there. So they were away in the Greek islands having a wonderful time. And very, very sadly, because in Greece, they drive on the opposite sides of the road to we do here. So she looked the wrong way, stepped out onto the road, and a bike came and hit her and killed her. Now, her husband had been totally reliant on her in every area of his life. And here he was, stuck in a foreign country, didn't know anybody. It was extremely challenging for him. He didn't know the passwords to anything. He didn't know how to cook. It was a very...
Plus, you're not home.
No.
You're not home in your own space either, so it makes it even harder.
Couldn't speak the language. It was huge for him.
And you have to get the body back home and everything.
Yeah. So that's why it's really important, even if you're not faced with a crisis or a cancer diagnosis or whatever it is, to do the inner work, where he's not just relying on her all the time in a physical, but in an emotional way as well.
Yes.
It's kind of like that an unhealthy dynamic in the relationship. So it doesn't mean to say that the wife would take care of it all, because we have balance, but to know that you can do it if something comes along.
Yeah, and I teach that in workshops actually, because it's good for the other spouse to even know where the stuff is, even if they don't actually know how to do it, but they know what you're doing. So in some shape or form, even if they're not doing it themselves, but to know is what we try to get. Women are really bad because they'll leave it up to their husbands. I've asked so many over the years, and they'll say, "Oh, my husband's looking after that. It's all looked after." Famous last words. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So know what you have, know what you don't have, understand what the other spouse is doing. Yeah, that would be that's probably the most worst case scenario of being in another country and having to deal with the death. Oh, it's worse than at home.
Yes. Yes. I mean,
The
even
costs and the
that
everything.
would have been so stressful even at home, but in
Yeah.
a foreign country.
Yeah.
That was horrendous for him. Yeah.
Yeah. Awful.
So,
Awful.
yeah, absolutely. Have that backup plan no matter what.
Yeah. Because the emotional part you can work on, but you won't be able to work on the financial, physical part if you don't know what's happening in your home. And it's got to start with that. Even if you don't
Yes.
actually do it yourself, but know what is being done.
Yes. How to access those passwords or whatever that is.
Where the bills are and where the keys are and what cat food and vet the pet goes to and all that kind of stuff. There's so many things other than just like the will and power of attorney. There's so many other aspects. Well, that's
the
crazy.
thing. We kind of live our lives like we've got blinkers on, and it, with a lot of my clients I work with, it's when we actually face the worst case scenario, that and accept it, that we can actually start to live life. And that's like with me, even though I had that belief that I was healed, but knowing that my life was finite, that's when I made completely different choices in my life. I just chose to be happy. What's the point in stressing about small things? It's just not worth it. We stress about way too silly things. People are, they want the latest gadget and all the rest of it. Why?
Yeah. Just live today.
Spend time.
Be in the present.
Just be in the moment. Enjoy nature. Nothing is, there's nothing more magical than being in nature. That's the biggest gift we've got.
It sure is.
And to be with our loved ones.
Yes. Well, yeah, that's kind of part and parcel. What final messages would you like to give the listeners, even though we probably could talk about this forever?
Well, what I would like to ask your listeners to do is to learn to love themselves. If they were their own best friend, what would they do for themselves? That is a really big question, because often we can, give and do things for other people, but what would we do for ourselves? Actually, I wouldn't do something because I thought I should. I would listen and do what I really knew what was good for me.
And I think that's a really good way of putting it, because if you had this really best friend, what would they say to you and what would they do for you? Because we always look at it helping others, but we don't look at it helping us.
So many of us, especially women, give way more than what we receive, and we have to have everything in life in balance, and something will give if you end up giving more than you receive. And it's scary. When I had to learn to receive, because it's triggering your feelings of being unworthy, it's really scary. So it's just, if someone does something for you, then just open up your heart and say thank you, from that place of knowing that that's part of the balance of giving and receiving, and you deserve it.
Yes, you are deserving. Absolutely. Well, that's awesome, Jenny. Thank you so much for all that good information and tips that you've given everybody. It's a crazy whirlwind that you've been involved in. Crazy.
It's crazy. Now that I'm through it, I see it as a gift, because what I've learned has totally changed the trajectory of my life. And I just love everything about my life. I love what I do. I love where I live. I have beautiful friends.
Family.
Love being with my family. Yeah.
It's awesome.
But it's available for all of us.
Yes. You just have to put it in motion, right? You just have to put it together.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jenny. I can't believe our time's up. I was really getting involved. I felt like I was reading a book, and it just kept me, waiting and listening. For anybody out there that has anyone going through cancer diagnosis or feeling not worthy and having anxiety problems and that sort of thing, it'd probably be very helpful for them to hear this video. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe to all of those family and friend members that you can at least maybe help in one little tiny way. We are not Superman. We act like we are because nothing's going to happen, right? What could happen? But as you know, that's far from the truth. And we can look at the last 5 years in the world around us and the shootings in the schools, the streets, the work accidents, car accidents, overdoses, and the pandemic, not to mention the crazy wars and the natural disasters, the wildfires and floods and hurricanes around the world. Our life is different, and we need to remember that and have a plan and have a grab-and-go bag and have an emergency exit plan and all of that kind of stuff that we deal with on our podcast as well as in our app. So if you are thinking about that special someone right now while you're watching this show, and you just don't know how many birthdays that person might have left, you don't know if they're going to be here tomorrow. So reach out to them today. Tell them how much you love and care about them today, because you just don't know what tomorrow might bring. That being said, I always end our show, and I'm sure Jenny knows who Carol Burnett is.
I do.
Do you remember?
Yes, I do. Yes,
and her
I do.
anniversary special was just on TV last night. So I, of course, had to watch that. She was on with Julie Andrews and herself on the anniversary special. I'm so glad we had this time together just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started. And before you know it, comes the time we have to say so long. So long, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you for your kind and tip words, all of that stuff. Unbelievable story, Jenny. Thank you so much for coming out.
It's been my pleasure. I've really enjoyed talking to you today, Tina.
Thanks you. Thank you so much. So everybody, as Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan till you get punched in the mouth. Very true. You think you're prepared when you're really not. So let me help you. Let me guide you in any shape or form. You can go onto our Facebook group. It's an Ambassadors VIP group where you can ask questions. You might have an aunt that has been through some issues of a death in the family or of your own or family or friends, and you're getting prepared and you want to know what to do. That's the right place for you, is over on our VIP group where you can ask questions and talk, post. You can make posts on it, all sorts of things, because we're just one big happy family. So everybody, expect the unexpected. Be kind. Stay safe. Till next week. See you next time. Bye for now. And thanks to Jenny again.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.